Hello and welcome to the RTE Soccer Podcast. I'm Anthony Pyne and I'm delighted to be joined this week by Paul Corry and Keith Treacy. We'll be looking at the title race as we head for the season's climax. We'll have a chat about Bohemians' new manager, Declan Devine, and further reflect on the huge achievement of the Ireland women's team who qualified for first ever World Cup at Hampton Park last Tuesday night. But first, we're going to digest the drama of Sunday's FAI Cup semi-finals. It's Shelbourne versus Derry City in the decider at the Aviva Stadium next month. What a great match that is to look forward to as well. We're going to have a chat about Shels first of all. They met Waterford at the RSC thanks to a Gavin Malloy goal. It's their first time in the cup final for 11 years. But before that, let's hear from their manager, Damien Duff. He was speaking to RTE Sport at the final whistle.
Yeah, well, listen, the guys are in there singing songs. You just want to be careful what you play. But absolutely amazing. The streams come true. Like I said, absolutely blows away anything I've ever done in my career. Amazing day. Obviously a hostile crowd, 4,000 or 5,000. Did we play great? No, but I told the guys in the dressing room beforehand, it was 18 lines versus 4,000 or 5,000, and we come out on top, so couldn't be any prouder.
Isn't semi-finals all about just winning though?
Exactly, yeah, but listen, high standards. I always want to do it the nice way, but it wasn't pretty like you said, Tony, but we're there.
Gavin Malloy to score a goal you'd have been proud of, I'm sure. Does that make it a masterstroke for you to choose him in the first place?
I don't know about that. I think his granddad Theo will be very proud as well, along with the extended family. There's quite a few of them, but listen, Gav's been outstanding. That sliding doors moment 3-4 months ago, gets his chance, takes it, all of a sudden he's playing the cup final, so it's what dreams are made of.
In the earlier part of the game you controlled the game though, and you hit the woodwork, you could have had 2 or 3.
Yes, we could have. Well, listen, sometimes it can come back to bite you and you can feel the nerves, the tension, and maybe we looked a bit leggy from the emotion of the game in the second half. But like you said, Tony, doesn't matter what way once you get through.
We start the mind games now. You're underdogs against Derry, surely?
Listen, I'll have to change my mindset because all I've said all along was get to the final. I never addressed whether winning the final. So the guys, the staff, myself alone, we'll have to change that mindset. Yeah, we're in it to win it now. But listen, we've won. We shouldn't be here. Little old Shels, as people call us. Everyone hates us, I think. We're in the division for another year and we're in a final. Hey, it doesn't get any better.
Well done.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, that was Damien Duff, and I think we can all see, lads, what it meant to him yesterday. I mean, one of the things he said within that interview, Keith, it blows away anything I've done in my career. I mean, is that? Do you think he means that, or is that he's just caught up in the moment? Because I mean, he had such an incredible career. That is quite a statement to say that, isn't it?
It's a huge, when you consider what Damien Duff has done in his career. You know, I'm a huge admirer of Damien as a footballer, and the things he's done, the World Cup he played in Pyne, with the way he played for Ireland that year, he was excellent. He's moved to Chelsea, the Champions League games he played. The one that comes to mind is the game against Barcelona for Chelsea. He scored the goal. But to say something like that, look, manager, like I'm literally just dipping my toe into the water of coaching now, and I'm starting to realise how hard it is and how much more responsibility you have than versus as a player. So I think Damien realises being a manager is really, really tough, and he seems to take to it like a duck to water. He really has, and he hasn't just jumped in the deep end. He's done it the right way. He's come up through various underage things, and jumped through. And he seems to be taking to it like a duck to water. And I was doing the co-commentary for RT yesterday, and any sort of 50-50 ball or 50-50 decision that the ref gave, he was out of the technical area. He was waving his hands, and he's just as entertaining to watch as the game half the time. And I love it because I've been in Irish camps with Damien, and he was really, really shy and withdrawn person as a footballer. It was very hard to get anything out of him, but as a manager, he's gold to watch. I love him, and even listening to his before the semi-final, I listened to his press conference, and he made me want to get my boots on and run through a brick wall from him. He's that type of manager, and I think he's taken a lot of the Mourinho aspects, that the old Mourinho style at Chelsea. I think he's taken an awful lot of aspects from that and running with it, and it seems to be a match made in heaven at the minute.
Yeah, and another part of that interview, another quote within that interview, Paul, little old Shels, as people call us, everyone hates us, I think. That is very Mourinho-esque, isn't it? But he's really embraced the whole sort of needle, for want of a better word, within the league and the rivalries. He hasn't shirked that at all. He seems to, he faces that full on, doesn't he, week to week?
Yeah, he certainly does. I mean, there's there's certainly elements of Mourinho, even the language that he used within that interview about kind of that siege mentality where it's everybody against Shels. And I mean, I would speak to people consistently throughout the league, and I'm not sure that that rhetoric is certainly repeated. Like I don't hear many people disliking Shels, maybe close rivals when it comes around to match day, yes, but it seems to be working for them. Like what Keith said, the players are certainly buying into what he's building there at the club, and if that's what he needs on a day like a semi-final to get them through, well then he's going to go with that narrative. And semi-finals are there for winning, Anthony. Like it wasn't exactly the prettiest games of football. The conditions were absolutely horrific yesterday, but they really dug in yesterday, and you can kind of see that determination within the squad. He's got a young crop of players there who are certainly rallying behind him, and he's done extremely well to get them this far. So yeah, I mean, he's early on in his managerial career. There's probably different elements from different managers that you'll see at different stages, and that one yesterday certainly had the kind of the Mourinho narrative to it, and it's working. If they can add 2-3 players to that squad next year, they'll go up another level. But what he's put in place now is really strong foundations, and he's got a core group of players there that you can certainly build upon next year. And who's to say that they're not going to go the full way against Derry in the final?
And they were worth it yesterday, Keith. I think. I mean, it was 1-0, but like I think it was relatively comfortable for them, was it?
Yeah, it was relatively comfortable. I think what Paul is saying is right, and what Damien is saying about people not liking Shels. I think what he's talking about is Shels' style of play. They play that 3 centre halves and the 2 wing backs, and as soon as the wing backs lose it, they just retreat into a back 5 so quickly. It's horrible to play against. I played against back 5s like that, and you get, when you win the ball in the turnover play, you've got to go and hold them straight away. So your passing has to be accurate, it has to be crisp. And with the conditions yesterday and the pitch being the way it was never, Waterford were going to have to do something exceptional to hit the back of the net. And to be fair, the Shels goal, the Malloy's goal, was an excellent. Matty Smith just gets into a little pocket of space, plays a beautifully weighted pass into Malloy's path. And initially I was thinking, go on, cross it. But he hits it, and he just hits it so sweetly straight into the back of the net. And after that, Shelbourne, I wouldn't say they camped, but the next 10 minutes they hit the post, missed a one-on-one, and then they sort of retreated ever so slightly. Phoenix Patterson was lively throughout, but without really ever testing Brendan Clark. He was making nice little runs. Junior Quintard never really came into the game. Trenton huffed and puffed, but Shelbourne, the 2 wing backs and the 2 centre midfielders, they just kept them under wraps. They once or twice they had half little runs, little half shots, but throughout the 90 minutes, given the conditions, Shelbourne were largely comfortable, and Damien Duff would be delighted because they went in the first 20 minutes, they were 1-0 up, and they just kept the Waterford at arm's length. And given the talent that you have, I know they're a First Division team, but the 5 wins on the bounce to go down there in them conditions and do what Shelbourne did, huge plaudits to them, because it wasn't easy.
There was a bit of Keith Treacy, that Gavin Malloy strike.
Obviously excellent. When it was some strike, I tell you, the way he hit it, Paul, honestly, when it went to him, as a player, you're thinking, go on, hit it. That never even entered my head. I was thinking, go on, put it across the 6-yard box. So if I was a player, I probably would have started berating him, but then it hit the back of the net and it was, oh, what a great strike. So, yeah, no, fair play. It was a great goal, and the game needed something like that to open it up. And yeah, Shelbourne were brilliant, and Waterford just couldn't seem to lay a glove on them whatsoever.
Yeah, it was a beautiful strike to win it. And the reward is a meeting with Derry City, and they could actually finish the season with a double. They were too strong for Treacy United. We're just going to hear from Rory Higgins before we have a chat about them. He took the opportunity to pay tribute to a couple of club legends after that match. Again, he was speaking to RT Sport.
That's difficult as a manager. They really enjoy it. There's so much going on. But you see the potential of this football club to last. And to be fair, we had a tricky month in May, early June, where results didn't go for us, but our supporters kept coming. We kept selling the place out. And I suppose it's on days like this where you remember Ryan McBride, who would probably still be playing and captain in the club at this stage. You remember Mark Farn. I played with both. Mark Farn scored a cup final goal. Ryan McBride's played in cup finals. So for me personally, and I know a lot of the players and staff here, it's on days like this that you really remember those two, and they're in our thoughts. And it's a massive day for the football club, and hopefully we can bring a huge crowd now to Dublin.
There was a steward before the game was pointing out where Ryan's house was and Liam Coyle's house was, and was talking to us about various players who literally have grown up in the shadow of this football club. How important is that connection and the realisation within a dressing room for so many players of what it means to people who have lived their life based on the Brandywell and based on this club?
Yeah, Derry's it's unique in a sense. It's had a lot of hard times. And you're right, there's a lot of special players who have come from a stone's throw this ground. And Ryan, the goal that we scored, the 2 goals in, Ryan lived about 100 metres behind that, if even that. So it's special. It's a unique football club, and it's important that we keep. I suppose the new players that come into the club, it's important that we educate them on who these people are and what they mean to the club. And for me personally, they've been in my thoughts from the minute I woke up this morning.
Yeah, that was Rory Higgins chatting about Derry, and a really good day for them too. Paul, there's big expectations around Derry this year. Would you, at this point of the season, say that they've largely fulfilled them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was probably a number of questions coming into the season about how quickly they'd be able to gel some of the players that they brought in, because they brought a number of new faces into the club. And obviously Rory is quite early in his managerial career and how he was going to manage that whole situation. But I mean, since the turn of the break, they've been flawless in their displays, in their kind of their points tally and how they've progressed in the different competitions. Bar kind of that slip in May, I think it was, when they went a number of games where they dropped a number of points. The season has gone really well for them. I think what's been particularly important is bringing McElhenney back in from the cold and from being out injured, and the same with Michael Duffy. And they just bring so much experience to that squad, one, how to win games, but also so much quality in that final third. And that really showed yesterday. I kind of worried for Treacy after 15-20 minutes when they went 2-0 up. The McGonigal goal was probably a bit of a gift. McElhenney kind of just drifted into the penalty area, good pull back and a good finish. And then the second goal, the McJanet cross and a good Brandon Kavanagh header, started to think, God, this could be a bit of a Dundalk at loan situation from a couple of years ago in FA Cup semi-final. But to be fair to Tommy Barrett's side, they held in there and they pulled one back through end of Curran. But by and large, Derry had 90% of the play. They should have scored far more goals. They should have put the game to bed early, but they did enough on the day to get to the final. And that's exactly what Rory's looking to do. I mean, if they could bag an FAI Cup final this year, add to that squad, they're going to be a serious threat to Shamrock Rovers. They have the resources, they have the players, and in Rory Higgins, they certainly have the manager to go to that next level. So it's all boding well at this moment in time. I think the addition of Mark Connolly, since he's gone from Dundalk to Derry, has really shored things up at the back. Owen Toll obviously left, so they need a replacement there, and I think he's been extremely strong since he's gone in. And at this moment in time, Derry are banging form, and they're going to challenge on all fronts, and they're going to be a difficult team to stop in the Aviva, that wide pitch, those players going forward. They're a serious team going forward. And just to pick up actually, Anthony, on Rory's point, within the interview when he spoke about the connection to the community and the players, I think that's vitally important. Like when I went up and I played there, it's such a difficult place to go. Kind of felt like in the last 2-3 years it became a bit of a soft touch, and maybe there was a bit of a disconnect between the club and the community. But Rory's brought that right back to home. You can see that there's almost an education given to players who come up who are not from the area about what that club means, and you can certainly see it. The likes of Brandon Kavanagh, the likes of Brian Marr, speaking to them, they know what it's about up there, and Derry seem to have gotten back to where they were probably a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's going to be a great occasion, that final. We had Bowles Pats last year, which was, it's always a great day, but two clubs really hungry for a bit of silverware and a bit of success, so we can really look forward to that. We should just have a word as well, Keith, on the two beaten semi-finalists, Treacy and Waterford. They're both in the playoffs in the first division. They actually meet each other in the playoffs later this month. But plenty of credit. They've come out with this cup run with plenty of credit, and things looking pretty good for both of them off the pitch and on the outside, at least looking in.
Yeah, I think both of them should hold their heads up high. Treaty, obviously, like Paul says, after 15-20 minutes, they're 2-0 down. You're thinking, oh my God, the floodgate goes open here. This could be a really poor result. But fair play to them. They dug in, and going up the north, it's a really, really tough place to go. Obviously, the conditions aren't great. It's on an Astro as well, so there's all sorts of different conditions. But to be able to turn that tide when Derry are getting on top, and I know they didn't completely turn the tide. They didn't turn the fixture around. They only got the one goal, but to not take a drubbing up there when Derry are in the ascendancy, and with the amount of talent they have, McElhenney, Kavanagh, Duffy, McGonigal, these are all really, really talented. These are at the top end of the Premiership, never mind the Division 1. So Treacy should get huge talent. Waterford, exactly the same. Huge, pushed Cork all the way, only a couple of points behind them, and they're in great form as well. I have to be honest, I expected Waterford to be a lot better yesterday, but I put 90% of that down to conditions and 10% down to how well Shelbourne were. The conditions were awful. They really, really were. So to put any type of football together would have been difficult, and I think Shelbourne managed the conditions better than Waterford did. But like you say, they deserve huge credit. Still could get promoted, and if they do, you know, what a season that would have been. And to me, they would be my tip. I know they weren't great yesterday. They would be my tip for the playoffs, just given the form they're in the league.
Yeah, but we'll have a chat about, you know, potentially how those playoffs would go just in terms of the bottom of the Premier Division in a little bit. But just to look at the title race, because Shamrock Rovers were held by Drogheda 1-1. Bit of a bulky team for them this year, actually, Drogheda. Is it too late for Derry, Paul? 6 points behind, game in hand, probably run out of matches at this stage, but is there any kind of glimmer of hope there, do you think?
I mean, the ball is certainly still in Shamrock Rovers' court, and you would still expect them at this stage of the season to go and get the business done. But I mean, Drogheda almost single-handedly have helped Derry get back into this. Derry's league form has been impeccable, but Drogheda have taken so many points off Shamrock Rovers this season. Nobody would have suspected it. The next 14 days is going to be pivotal. Shamrock Rovers play St. Pat's, and then they play Derry, and if they can kind of navigate their way past St. Pat's, you would somewhat fancy them. But at this moment in time, it's hard to call, just because if you look at the last two fixtures, they dropped points against Drogheda, and then they very nearly dropped points against Shelbourne. The toll, I know Stephen Bradley mentioned in his interview yesterday that they're a professional club, and you know the European games shouldn't take its toll, but the results would somewhat evidence that it might be, and maybe not physically, but maybe mentally draining with regards to going from Thursday to Sunday, and the nature of the European games probably takes a lot out of them. You would still fancy them, Anthony. You know, the fixtures that they've Pats, Derry, and UCD. UCD, you would imagine they pick up 3, and if they pick up 2 from the other 6, that should be enough to get them over the line. They've got really good experience of handling big games, of winning big games, and of winning trophies. So you would certainly fancy them from here. But what Derry have shown over the last number of months is that if they do drop points, they've been there, and they've been on their heels to kind of pick up any slips that there's been. So the Pats game will be huge. If they beat Pats, it's done and dusted. But if they were to drop points, that game against Derry would be absolutely huge.
Absolutely huge, is right. Did you ever have that, by the way, Keith, just a bogey team in your playing days where, for whatever reason, you just couldn't get the better of them over a couple of seasons or the course of the season?
I had some dodgy grounds I hated going to, but the ground. I hated going to Millwall, you know, the old den. I hated going there. Never seemed to be able to play well, and the crowd were on top of you. Just a horrible game. You knew it was going to be a percentage game. It wasn't going to be a pretty game of football, and you know, you'd be in the tunnel, there'd be people barking at you and shouting, and it was just a really intimidating atmosphere. I was always happy to pack my bags and get out of that place, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I've never gotten so into Millwall. From everything from 5-year-olds to 50-year-olds, and I was only warming up on the bench, and my God, the abuse. I couldn't wait to get out of the place. And Ian Holloway was in charge. I'm sure you probably played against him at that period of time.
Yeah.
He was like a conductor to the orchestra. He loved it. He was riling it up. Jesus Christ, what a place to play a game of football.
Yeah. But they did it to their own players as well, so you couldn't take it too personal. If one of their own players didn't play well, they'd be lifting them out and going down the dressing room. It was a unique place.
Yeah. Just a reminder then of the run-in of the two teams. So Derry have Shelbourne at home next, then Sligo away to Shamrock Rovers, which, as the lads mentioned, a potentially absolutely huge game. And then they finish at home to Dundalk. Shamrock Rovers have Pats at home, Derry at home, and then UCD away. So we'll see what the next couple of weeks brings. Dundalk throw their point ahead of Pats, who had a good 3-1 win over Bohemians last Friday. And at the bottom, Finn Harps were beaten 2-1 by Dundalk, and that means they are level on points with UCD. Keith, UCD have a game in hand. Harps run in is Bowls away. They then play UCD at home in their second last match, and then they finish away to Drogheda. I think you've kind of been saying for a good few months that you think UCD are going to be the ones that escape automatic relegation. Are you sticking with that?
I might as well. Yeah. Look, I think UCD and Finn Harps, I'm not sure, the two of them seem to be, losing by the odd goal here and there, then taking a hammering, and they're just stuttering now, but it looks like it's all going to come down to the 28th of October when they play each other, and Finn Harps will be at home. I think it will all come down to that. That's going to be a huge game, but I do fancy Finn Harps. I'm not sure why. I done co-commentary when Pats played them, and Pats beat them in the game, but there was just little pockets in the game where things were clicking in an attacking sense, and I just liked them. I just thought these are all right. If these could put this together for a sustained period, and look, losing away to Pats from a UCD point of view is not going to relegate you. It's matching Finn Harps and what Finn Harps do. So look, I would still back them with no great confidence, but I'd stick with them. And if Tom Lonergan can keep hitting the back of the net, he could be the difference between the two sides.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Paul? I mean, we always kind of assume that Harps will find a way to drag their way out of it, but year on year, you're down there. There's always the danger that eventually you're going to get caught, and potentially this could be the season that they do get caught.
Yeah, even when they start the season well, they seem to themselves in this position come kind of September, October. Just looking at the UCD fixtures there, like Drogheda and Shels are certainly games that they'll fancy picking up some points in. So leading into that Finn Harps game, you wouldn't be at all surprised if they were to pick up something along the way, and then kind of all leads its way to Ballybuffet. Just looking at the 28th of October away to Finn Harps, it's not going to be a pretty game of football up there. The pitch, I'd say, would be in bits. The wind and the rain, probably a bit of a blend, and it kind of stinks of a Finn Harps kind of scrappy win to get them out of another relegation battle. But UCD are, I don't know, like they're so inconsistent. Obviously, they've lost kind of two of their main players throughout the season, and that's maybe kind of hindered their progress a bit, and they've always been playing a bit of catch up. I always feel when it comes to this stage of the season with the big games that it can go one way or another with them. And I just have a feeling that Finn Harps are just going to have a bit too much, particularly in that game. And if Finn Harps win that game, I think it'd be very difficult for UCD to kind of make up the points from there. But if they can pick up something in the lead to that game, if they can kind of nudge their way ahead of Finn Harps, probably lean in favour of them. But it could be difficult. I know I've probably given you, Anthony, probably three different answers there. It's just so close. It's been so close between the two of them all season that it's very hard to call. But Finn Harps have done it before. You would probably just lean in favour of them.
Yeah, I mean, the Harps' next game is away to Bowls, and this is the way football is, Keith. Bowls they've got a new manager, Declan Devine. They've been looking since August. Keith Long departed. So potentially, first home game for Declan there. He might be a bit of a reaction, a bit of a bounce. They've taken their time with this, Keith, in terms of appointing a new boss, and there's been a lot of names linked and mentioned in the conversation. What do you think drew them to Declan Devine?
It'll be very interesting. He done well in his two stints with Derry. Not so well in the second half of the second stint, but overall done very well at Derry. It'd be very, very interesting. I was at the game on Friday night. I know Declan Devine was at the game on Friday night. I know I think today is his first day in the job officially, but he was at the game on Friday night against Pats. And, I was expecting there to be a bit of a bounce just because he was in the building, and you'd think people would think, look, the new manager's eyes are on me. There wasn't really much of that there. And I spoke to a couple of people down the tunnel, and I think there could be a couple of people going out the door soon enough, and there could be a bit of a turnover in the off season. And look, it's a big job. I really do think it's a big job. It's a big club in the League of Ireland standards, and it's a big fan base, and he will have to hit the ground running. I do think there's a certain degree of success that Bows fans want, and I don't mean winning the league. I mean challenging for Europe. They didn't get anywhere near it this season. Not really flirting with relegation, but they're more looking over their shoulders than looking up the top of the league, in my opinion. So it is a big job, and Declan Devine, what he will do is he'll go in and he'll put a spine to the team and he'll put a structure to them and he'll make them work hard. And that's the basics. And if they do the basics and he gets people on side and he makes the right type of signings in the off season, then yeah, Bows can challenge for Europe. But at the minute, you know, when you go back to the quarter final against Shelbourne, it was so poor. And then the last time I seen them was Friday against St. Pat's, really, really poor again. And you know, they're two Dublin derbies that you just didn't turn up in, and now their season is just dwindling out. But Declan Devine now will be in. He has 2 or 3 games to work with the lads, 2 or 3 weeks until the next season. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting. But you know, I think it's a huge job. I have to be honest. I think it's a bigger job than people think it is. People see Bows as a very attractive prospect, which it is as a club, but I think it's a massive job. I have to be honest, and we'll see how he goes on a footballing front. But I think there'll be a big clear out in the off season.
Yeah, I'll just read you a quote here from Derek Pender, the caretaker manager. This is from last week, Paul, or the start of last week. It's up to them as in the players, if they want to buy into what Bowls is as a club. And I don't think everyone has this year. I'm sure people will be moving on at the end of the season. Maybe that gives us an indication of the issues they've had over the course of the year, that there's something just not right there, something broken maybe within that dressing room.
Yeah, I mean, everybody kind of alludes to the League of Ireland and the huge turnover that we've seen within sides and within squads, and Bows is probably no different. If you look at the team that played against Pats the other night versus the team that played the FAI Cup final, I think Kieran Kelly was the only survivor. So the fact that they've lost so much, I guess, their squad from last year that did particularly well in Europe and particularly well in the probably shouldn't come as much as a surprise as maybe we are to where they sit in the league. I think, you know, naturally enough, recruitment is the most important part of football, and getting the right players into the building. And they've not done that. They've not replaced the likes of Tierney, Devoy, Georgie Kelly, the players that they've brought in. It just hasn't worked. And that's probably what Derek Pender is alluding to there. There's a certain kind of work ethic that the Bows fans expect when their side go out, and they just haven't met that consistently enough, and the effort levels have probably dropped off from what they've seen in previous seasons. So yeah, it's a massive job, like Keith says. I mean, Declan Devine's number one priority now is that he gets the right bodies into the building. You know, the recruitment side of things is going to be vitally important for Declan Devine, and that he gets the right players into the building to play the way he wants his team to play, and the Bows fans kind of expect. So with the club going full time next year, they've got a lot right off the pitch in recent years. They've got by and large a lot right on the pitch. It's important now that over the next 12, 18 months that the club kind of gets back on the right track to where it's been, and they start pushing again, particularly in that European football front. So it's a big job for Declan Devine. It's one I'm sure the club will rally behind him, and it's in some important stage in the club's development.
Yeah, it sure is, and it's going to be really interesting, as you say, to see how he gets on. He's certainly going to bring plenty of energy and passion to that job, that is for sure. Okay, we're just going to have a little further reflection on the Ireland women's team who qualified for a first ever World Cup as we recorded today. It's 6 days since that famous win in Hampton Park. Keith, I mean, like we don't need to dwell on this at this point. I don't think that they probably soured their own celebrations the following day in terms of what came out in the dressing room and things like that. But they certainly didn't sour their legacy or the scale of the achievement. I mean, what did you make of it all, and what do you think the impact of this is for the women's game in this country?
I think the impact will be huge. I remember when the English ladies won the Euros, and I thought that would have a spillover effect into Ireland, and it would inspire the next generation of women. But now the Irish women team have qualified for the World Cup, first ever time to do it. And, you know, look, it's a huge achievement. I don't know how best to put it, but I have a 13-year-old girl and a 12-year-old girl, and they have no interest in football. Never wanted to, look at anything to do with me in football, but they took note when the ladies qualified for the World Cup. And it really, I think there's going to be such a knock-on effect of this. This is what got me into football. I remember my dad bringing me to Lansdowne and the Irish team doing so well in the early 90s, and it inspired me to go on to be a footballer. And I think the girls should be so proud of themselves, because they have inspired the next generation. And yeah, I just think it's excellent. I really do. I'm so proud of them. Each and every one of them to go over to Hampden, and I must be honest. I thought it was a step too far. I thought Scotland would be too good for us. But and going to Hampden as well. You know, the men's team were only just there, and we seen how hard it was for them. So we knew it was going to be a tough place. But there was bodies on the line, passion, desire to get the goal as well, then, and to defend like we did. It was just inspiring. It really, really was inspiring. It was. Every one of them was fighting for the Irish jersey. They all loved it, and the passion. It was really inspiring, I have to say. And like I say, I loved it. And even my two little girls who have no interest in football have taken an interest now, and I'm sure they'll be watching the Women's World Cup with me. So well done to them, and I can only just keep saying well done. I'm in awe of them. So proud of them.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Paul. Like maybe a lot of people don't realise how big the tournament is or is going to be, because we haven't been in it. Now we're actually invested and going to be in it. This is a huge deal, and as Keith says, it's a team that and we can debate about how they set up. They are quite defensive, not always easy on the eye, but it is effective, and they are a seriously dogged and committed team, aren't they? This Ireland side.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I probably consider myself a bit of a blow-in or a bandwagon fan, like only since kind of this the World Cup qualifiers taking place have I really been kind of tracking it on a consistent basis. And I mean, we all saw the magnitude of the European Championships when they were on in the UK during the summer, and kind of how much that game has grown over the last 3-4 years, particularly within Europe, and the fans and the following behind it. And I'm sure there was many players within that squad who were looking on, jealous of the fact that we weren't there, and maybe determined then to get to the next major tournament. And they've done exactly that. I mean, the performances, not only against Scotland, but the performance against Finland recently, Sweden within the group, the performances were so dogged and they were so determined. And there's so many players that have kind of grown into that shirt during that campaign, and Courtney Brosnan is no better example. I mean, the penalty save was one thing, but some of the pressure moments that she just controlled herself, and she was commanding of her area, and that kind of presence kind of sprinkled itself throughout the team. And when you've got the likes of Denise O'Sullivan and Katie McCabe in that final third, you've always got an opportunity of a moment of magic, whether it be from a set piece or open play. And we've seen that not only in the Scotland game, but throughout the European or through the qualifiers. So it bodes really well. We keep a number of clean sheets. We are a threat from a number of different avenues within any game, and we're a difficult team to play against. So the tournament is massive. The draw, I think, takes place quite soon. Once we kind of know who we're going up against, you wouldn't at all bet against us getting out of the group and being really competitive over there. But it's the impact of qualifying for the competition, everybody being excited about it, but it's kind of the spin-off from the tournament, the engagement, the numbers, the sponsorship, the growing of the game here domestically, feeding our players into the WSL in the UK, and that effect over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years is going to be massive. So it's huge for women's football here in Ireland, and the journey that they've been on from swapping the tracksuits in the airport to qualifying for a major tournament. You can't underestimate that journey at all.
Yeah, the draw takes place this Saturday actually in New Zealand, and we will learn then who Ireland are going to face next summer in Australia and New Zealand. They're going to be in pot 3, Ireland, so probably need a little bit of luck just in terms of the draw. They'll be the 3rd seed out of 14 out of 4 pots, so it could be very, very difficult, or they might catch a break and get one of the host nations, which would give them a good chance. New Zealand and Australia are, Ireland bet Australia in a friendly a year ago, so we await that with interest. And as you say, it's a huge moment for the women's game in this country. We are now going to move on to the Liverpool-Manchester City game on Sunday. Just have a quick chat on that before we wrap up, lads. Keith, I mean, when is a foul not a foul these days? We're hearing that the referees are letting things go, and everybody likes that. There's physical contact as part of the game. You don't want the referee blowing his whistle every 30 seconds, but there was quite a lot of debate around the Haaland disallowed goal. In my opinion, it was a clear foul, but was it, or what did you think?
In real time, I didn't think it was a foul, and I think the referee obviously agreed with me, because you can see him gesture to Fabinho to get back up that there wasn't anything in it. So that's grand. They scored a goal then. and then VAR have a look at it, and you think, yeah, there's a bit of a pull there, but that's VAR refereeing the game then. Do you know what I mean? That VAR is overstepping. It's not a clear and obvious thing because the refs, he's 2 or 3 yards away from it. He's seen it. Great view. It's not a clear and obvious one for me. So I think the goal should have stood, although I can see why it hasn't stood. It's one of them. It's a 50-50. For me, in looking at the whole picture, I would have liked to see the goal be given, just because I don't want VAR interrupting with things like that. That in itself, you know, hasn't really led to the goal. Liverpool should have defended better from there. I know Haaland gets through. I mean, none of the Liverpool players really went back and asked for a foul on Fabinho. They were looking for a foul on Anderson, and that wasn't given. And then it just happened to go back. So that for me wasn't clear and obvious, but I have to underline that I can see why it was given. It was one of them grey, shady areas. I think it was a bit weak, to be honest with you. But look, I thought it was a really good game. And the one thing for me that I think Pep Guardiola would be most annoyed about is Salah's goal is excellent. When Alisson kicks the ball 70 yards up the pitch and he does that turn on Cancelo, it's a beautiful bit of skill. But why does Cancelo try and win the ball? He's 1v1 with Salah. Salah has a rocket of a pass coming into him. At best, he's going to be able to take a touch and then start running at you. So Cancelo doesn't have to sell himself. He just stays 2 or 3 yards away from him, keeps him there, and gives his teammates an opportunity to get back and help him. When he goes to try and win that ball, he's given Salah a chance to go and beat him, which Salah does. And listen, I'm taking nothing away from the skill of Salah. The skill is excellent. It's unbelievable skill. But Cancelo should never, ever give him the chance to beat him. He shouldn't have sold himself. And that's a world-class defender in João Cancelo. But these sort of games hinge on the finest of margins. And João Cancelo deciding to jump in there has lost the game, and the little pull on Haaland and VAR has just all accumulated in it. But look, it wasn't the game I think we all expected. It was a bit more scrappy. It wasn't as free-flowing. There wasn't as many chances. And, you know, the one surprise was that Haaland didn't hit the back of the net, people are saying. But he had some decent chances. He had a header that he probably would have liked to have done better with. He looked dangerous all the time. But, look, it's still a learning curve for him. Although he's absolutely on fire. Some of the stats they're off the wall good, you know. So, you know, I wouldn't be quick to point the finger at him. He's been excellent, but, you know, City will be really, really disappointed, and Arsenal will be rubbing their hands together. You know, as an Arsenal fan, I still don't think they have any chance to go on and win the title. But, you know, the longer it goes on, the last time I started saying this was Leicester. No, surely they wouldn't. Somebody will catch them. Oh God, maybe they'll do it. And, you know, after the World Cup, if Arsenal are still in such a strong position, you know, maybe we'll start to believe then.
Yeah, it's just a mad season with that World Cup. It's splitting the whole thing in half. But Paul, we keep hearing about Liverpool and City that it's a sort of friendly rivalry, and it didn't look like it yesterday. Like there does seem to be genuine needle there, sort of underneath the surface.
There absolutely is. I mean, there's the utmost respect, particularly between the managers and the squads off the pitch. But the second it leads itself onto a 90-minute game, there is certainly needle there. And of course, you're going to expect that. I mean, the two teams have been pushing each other relentlessly for the last 2, 3, 4 years on all fronts in kind of domestic cups and in particularly in the league. And it's probably the game that Liverpool needed yesterday to kind of spark them into life. They've been a bit lethargic in certain performances. It kind of looked like key personnel and maybe taking the foot off the accelerator a bit in recent weeks, and that was a game where they really dug in. It wasn't, like Keith said, the prettiest of games, and maybe that's what Liverpool needed, and just kind of dig their heels in, be dogged, be difficult to break down, and that's certainly what they were. I thought, you know, Virgil van Dijk was absolutely superb yesterday, even just the little bits and pieces. You think back to the header that he cut out, one that Haaland looked certain to kind of nod in from 2-3 yards out. His recovery was superb. His use of the ball was absolutely brilliant, and he brought out the best of Gomez and Robertson either side of him. So a really important win for Liverpool. The likes of Salah as well, right back in form. The goal that Keith mentioned was superb. I was counting yesterday, it was 4 touches from the turn on the halfway line to finishing it, and he was a threat all day. He gave Diaz and Ake and Akanji numerous problems. So it springs Liverpool back into life. Whether or not they be able to kind of kick on from there, we'll wait and see. The performances to date kind of haven't really suggested that they're going to do it consistently, but that might be the turning point for them. And for City, it's just about kind of getting back to what they've been doing over recent weeks. Was really surprised by the way they set up yesterday. Couldn't really wrap my head around it. Grealish is banging form. I don't understand why you just wouldn't start that front three of Foden, Haaland and Grealish and try replicate what they did against Manchester United. So that was a strange one for me. But I mean, I'm probably inclined to not question Pep Guardiola given what he's done with that squad.
Yeah, we'll just give you the last word on Arsenal, Keith, because I mean you probably didn't see their win against Leeds, but okay, they might not go all the way this year. City are just so good, but what's different about them? Because they are going well. They do look like a decent side. They really do. Much more solid, accomplished side this year.
Yeah, well, like Paul was saying earlier about Bowes, I think the recruitment. I think they've got the recruitment right this year. I think Mikel Arteta is doing an outstanding job, and whenever anybody asks me why Arsenal are doing as well as they are, when you throw your mind back to Aubameyang being late for meetings, and he was the captain, and he was Arsenal's best player by a long way at the time. So it was a big decision for Mikel Arteta to decide, listen, I'm going to put you on the bench in North London derby, I believe it was. And ever since then, that was something that needed to happen. It wasn't something that the manager would have wanted to do because it would have affected the team on the pitch. But he had to do it because Arsenal's players, the likes of Smith Rowe, Saka, Martinelli, these are all young, Odegaard. They need a proper leader. They need standards set. And Aubameyang wasn't the type of off the field captain that he was looking for. Now he has the young players. Odegaard is the captain. Granit Xhaka, when you look back at where his career was 2 years ago when he was getting booed off the pitch by the fans and he was having verbals with them, he's a different player. He's playing higher up the pitch. And again, that comes back to Mikel Arteta. But I think Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus coming in. Thomas Partey looks like he's really starting to find his Arsenal feet as well, which is great. And the one thing that I have question marks over Arsenal, I've said it before, and I got a little bit of slack because with the World Cup bang in the middle of this season, with Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard. I know Odegaard's not going to the World Cup, but this is going to be a huge ask for them to stay injury-free, especially Saka and Martinelli, because they're playing on the wings. They're so explosive. They're going to be heavily reliant on them two wingers. They're going to come back from the World Cup. You would imagine Brazil and England will go pretty deep into the World Cup. That's going to be quite a big workload for players that are only in their second, maybe third season in the Premier League. So then, for me, at some point, with youth comes in experience, and I think they'll come off the boil at some point. But to go back to your original question, I think Jesus and Zinchenko, they have a winning mentality from Manchester City. And Mikel Arteta has brought his mentality from Manchester City as well. And I think, although Arsenal are a massive club and they shouldn't be replicating anybody else, I think why not take a blueprint from Manchester City? They've got, like I say, Zinchenko and Jesus in there, Mikel Arteta, they know the Manchester City way. And I think they're just dragging the standards up, and the Arsenal players, to their credit, have all bought into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, moving well for now, at least. We'll see how it goes post World Cup and into the new year. But Arsenal are top of the league and look good. Talking about title races, what about this in the Women's National League? We're 2 games to go. Wexford are on 55 points. Shels are on 54 points. Peamount and Athlone both on 52 points. So you got a 4-horse race here. On Saturday, Wexford play Peamount, and then Shelbourne play Wexford in the final match. So there's going to be a hell of a lot of twists and turns. Just a quick recap on the weekend's action in that league. Wexford are still a point clear after Kylie Murphy's hat-trick helped them to a 5-2 win over Sligo. Shels just behind them, on a point behind, as we mentioned. They had a 2-1 win away to DLR Waves. It's been a very good week for Anya O'Gorman. She was excellent in Glasgow to help Ireland qualify for that World Cup. And she hit 2 goals as Peamount bet Cork 5-0 at Turner's Cross. That keeps them in the hunt. And Athlone, who themselves could finish the season with a double. They're in the cup final as well. They've had a brilliant campaign, and they hammered Treacy 7-0. 5 goals from Emily Corbett in that match to keep them in the hunt. And the other game, Galway, came from a goal down to beat Bowls 2-1. We're going to leave it there for this week. So I'd like to thank Paul and Keith again for joining me. We will have coverage across RT of the Women's World Cup draw, from New Zealand on Saturday morning, online and on television. So join us for that. Thanks again, lads, and we will be back with you next week. Cheers.